What's up guys, Joe Rock here. In this tutorial, what we're going to be looking at now is the back end of our login system. So just to refresh your memory, this is so far what we've created. And one thing I did forget was to show you how to add this little mail icon on the side of this button. So I will do that quickly, it's not too bad. I'll show you that here in a moment. But for the piece of the tutorial, what we're going to be focusing on is creating this dialog fragment right here. And dialog fragments are really good for doing quick things that you need the user to do, or showing the user a prompt, but not taking them out of the activity entirely. And that's basically what a dialog fragment is. In any fragment in Android is a sub activity. How you can think of it. So here in this case, this is a dialog fragment, so it's like the dialog, but it's more for quick user interaction, and that's exactly what we're using that for. So let's dive into building this, and what we're going to be focusing on is bringing this up, animating it, and I'm not going to focus too much on styling because it's pretty much exactly what we've been doing in the last couple of tutorials. I will try to add the style AXML file so that you guys can bring that over and copy and paste it or write it out. But what we're going to be focused on is creating this dialog, the class, and bringing it up and animating it and wiring up the event for this button and doing all that good stuff. So let's get started. First, I'll show you how to add this. Alright, so let's stop running. Now, let's go into bring back up the main AXML file, and we're going to add that mail icon. And I just downloaded some free icon from the internet. You can really get whatever one you want, but it's going to be, you're going to want to put it in the drawable folder and add a new item. You want to add an existing item, and just go in your desktop and find the icon that you downloaded, which is right there, and that'll add it to your project. Now go onto your button and find something that's called drawable left. Click on that and you should see your newly added icon. Go ahead and select it, and that's really all there is to it. So now we have our little mail icon. You can go ahead and add something to here, get creative, and all that good stuff. So if you did want to add padding to the drawable, you can do that here and further edit it, but it looks good enough for me, and we'll go ahead and close that out. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is create the dialog class. Okay, so go ahead into our project and we're going to add a class. Here we go. Just make sure it's an empty class. We'll start from scratch on this one, and we'll call it dialog sign up. Okay. Alright. And the first thing we want to do is actually make it a fragment, and the way we do that is to inherit from the dialog fragment class. We now have a dialog fragment. Alright. And we're going to want to override a few methods, okay? And the first method that we're going to want to override is onCreateView. And you'll start to notice that fragments act a lot like activities, because they basically are. They're sub-activities. That's the way I like to think about them. And they're really helpful for doing really quick things, and I like to use them a lot. So getting used to fragments is definitely a good skill to know. And the way that it's done in C# is really, really simple. Alright. So first thing we want to do is we want to create the view that the dialog is going to hold. Alright. And lucky for us, the onCreateView comes with an inflator that we can use its inflate method to inflate our XML file, okay? And I already have this written up, okay? And I'm going to try to attach this to the YouTube video. And but it's a lot like the dialog, or I'm sorry, the main XML file that we've been working on. And it does have an edit text style, which I will attach as well. And then it also uses the button sign in style, or I'm sorry, sign up style for the button down here. All right. And that's what we created in the last tutorial. All right. So that's what I'll be using. Let's go ahead and go back to our dialog fragment, and let's make a view. All right. So we'll use the inflator, the local parameter, and we'll use its inflate method. Okay. And inflating, we've done this before, and this isn't specific to Xamarin. It's pretty much specific to Android. So if you guys are used to this, no sweat, right? But if you aren't, what it's basically doing is it's taking a layout and it's inflated it onto the dialog, or onto this view, which will return, and the dialog will take that and put it into its view. So that's basically what that's doing. Okay, so, and we call the dialog sign up, and we want to attach it to the container. So you want to take the dialog sign up, attach it to the container, and we'll put false because we don't want to attach it to the root. All right, so that's all that we need to do right now for that. And basically, if we really wanted to, all we need to do is just return the view. All right, so basically we just get the view and return it. It's not going to have any click events. It's not going to have anything special, but little by little, you'll be able to see that we'll make it what you've seen earlier in the tutorial. So let's go back into the main activity, and here is actually where we're going to call the dialog. Okay, so let's go back to the main file, because what we want to do is we want to wire up an event so that when this button is clicked, it'll pull up the dialog like you saw earlier. Okay, and the way you do that, once again, not specific to Xamarin, this is pretty standard for Android, is get a reference to this button by its ID, which is button sign up. Okay, so let's go back in our main activity, and we will make a button object. Okay, so private button, and we'll call it m button sign up. And I just like to use m as a prefix just to know that it's a global variable. All right, global is anything that's outside of all the methods, so that any method can reference this now. So it's global to this class. Okay, and that's just the way. So when it's a lot of code, it's really nice because then you can see, oh, okay, that's a global variable. And it really helps when there's hundreds or even thousands of lines of code and you're deep in it, and you be able to quickly tell that that's a global variable. All right, so just a little convention that I like to use, just so you know. All right, so the first thing that we want to do with this is we want to get a reference to that button that we made in the AXML file. Okay, and the way we do that is do find view by ID, and we send it a button type to the generic, and we find it by the ID, button sign up. Okay, so now that button is now the button that we have used in the AXML file. And the next thing we want to do is register the click event. And there it is. Okay, so we basically say, okay, when this is clicked, call this method and execute any code right here. And just to show you guys something cool, we can also add in an anonymous method by doing something like, well, first, yeah, so let me go back. I just want to get the arguments for that. And we can do something like the same thing, the same arguments. Sender event args or whatever, and that's perfectly acceptable as well, and execute any code in here. All right, so if we didn't want to make a whole another method for something really simple, we can just do it inside of here. And really it's just a preference. Sometimes it's cleaner to make a whole nother method. It's a little more readable, but here is a little bit more clean, and you can keep things a little more compact. So it's really just a preference, and let's just leave it like this for now. And the next thing we want to do in this method now, what do we want to do? Add a little comment, and we'll say pull up dialog. All right. So now let's go ahead and instantiate an object, a dialog sign up object. So dialog sign up, and we'll call it sign up dialog. All right, so we don't have any parameters because we didn't make a constructor, so it's just a default no parameter constructor, which is fine for right now. And the next thing we'll want to do is show it. And well, you know what? First we'll want to, when we're doing this, we first need to instantiate a fragment transaction. Okay, so let's make a fragment transaction, and this is just basically used to pull up the dialog from the activity. Okay, so sorry, I forgot about that. Let's go ahead and use, and what you want to use is the fragment manager class, and there's a static method that it's called begin transaction, and it returns a fragment transaction. All right, so that's ideal, right? And then now that we have our transaction, now we can call show, and notice that it takes a fragment transaction which we just created. Okay, so there's that, and then this is just something that you can put in, like, you know, whatever, just put dialog fragment. That's perfectly acceptable, and there you have it. So basically when this is clicked, this will occur and pull up the dialog. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that and make sure that everything's working the way it should be, because you never really know, you might get some weird errors, might have done something wrong, so it's always good to check. All right, so click this guy. Cool. Okay, so it looks a little weird. First of all, we don't get that animation. That's because we haven't added it yet. It has an bar up here at the top, which we don't want. Usually I got rid of it, so we don't really need it in this case for a dialog fragment. I'll show you how to get rid of that. All right, because we don't need to inflate anything onto this, so the action bar is not really needed. Okay, so we'll get rid of that. But for right now, it's working great. We have everything that we need. Nothing's wired up to anything, but everything seems good. All right, so now let's go ahead and stop running this. And the next thing that I'll show you is how to create the animation that makes it flow from the bottom and then to the right when you're done with it. Okay, not really needed, but it helps to make your application flow a little nicer, a little better in a user interface. So, and it's pretty simple to do. The first thing we want to do to add the animation is we want to go over to the resource folder, and we can make another folder, or I'm sorry, another file, an XML file, and I am just out of it. We want to make another folder, not a file. All right, and we'll call it anim, so just for short for animation. Okay, and then in that animation folder, we're going to want to go ahead and create an animation, and we'll call this slide up. All right, and Here we are. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is create a translate. All right, and just add that URL that pretty much is in every file. And pretty simple with animations, this one at least, is where is it coming from y delta, from the y axis, and 100%, so fully come out, and we want to specify the 2 delta 0, and then finally the duration. Okay, and close that off. All right, so this is coming from 100% of the y, so from the bottom of the screen to the top, and because the dialog won't take up the whole screen, it's going to go into the center. All right, and close that out, and we need to go ahead and make another item, another animation, and we'll call it slide right. Okay, and let's what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open this back up, copy and paste it over just to save time, and we'll change this from y to x, and this will be 0, so from all the way to the left and out all the way, and we'll change this to 100. Okay, and pretty simple as that. Change that to x, don't forget that. So from here all the way out, so the slide up is going to go from the bottom to the top, the center for the dialog, and then from where it's at to out of the screen, just like you saw earlier in the tutorial. So all right, so now we have those 2 animations. Now we've got to make an animation. Okay, so with these 2 animations, and the way you do that is come into here, and let's make a style folder, or file, I'm sorry, and just call it styles. All right, and with that we will want to make another resource, okay, inside of the style XML, and let's make a style, name it whatever you want. I'll name it dialog animation. Okay, and the first item is going to be window enter animation. Make sure it's spelled that way. Okay, and the animation is located in the animation folder, and it's going to be slide up. Okay, so that's what it's going to do when it enters in. And then our next animation is going to be window exits animation. Okay, also located in the same place, and it's called slide right. All right, let's close off the style tag and close that. All right, so now we have our style called dialog animation, and that's good to go. And let's come back to our dialog class. All right, and we want to actually add the animation. So we want to say, okay, when it's created, do this first. Okay, so, and the way you do that is pretty simple. It's not too bad. you want to override another method, and that method is called onActivityCreated. Okay, so this guy gets overridden, and all we need to do now is first actually what we can do, and this is where we can do the, remember the action bar that was kind of on the top when it first came out and I told you we're going to get rid of it? We could do that here, okay? So in code, just do dialog.window.request feature, and it takes a Windows feature and an enumeration. So let's do window features, and then we will give it the enumeration of no title. All right, so that'll cut that off just the way we want it. We'll let it still call its base method, okay? And the last thing we'll do is we want to actually add the animation. So let's do dialog window, go into the attributes property, then to the Windows animation property, and we're going to set that to our animation, okay? Oops. So let's find our animation, which is in the style, and dialog animation. And it might not show up right away because it might need to build. It is just not recognizing it. So let's go ahead and build it. If you are getting it, if your IntelliSense popped up, and it should be fine, but mine's not. So let me go ahead and rebuild it. And it should be able to find it once it rebuilds. Yep, cool. And if you're ever curious, there it is once it rebuilds. So it just didn't rebuild in time for me to use it. Okay, so there it is. We now have our animation. So let's just comment this. Set the title bar to invisible. All right. Set the animation. It's always good practice to do that. All right, so there we have it. And now let's go ahead and run it and see how it looks. Let's make sure that our animation is working the way we expect it to. Pull up the emulator. Cross our fingers. All right, let's go ahead and click on the button. Cool. Okay, so it is working as expected. Alrighty. Cool deal. Okay, so now we have basically a click event that pulls up the dialog, a dialog which is over here, which inflates the view, which is over here. All right, and then sets this to no title and pulls up an animation that we created just a few minutes ago. Okay, so that's just a recap of everything that we've done in this tutorial. And in the next tutorial, we'll do even more C# coding, and we'll really get into adding some referencing the text boxes and getting user input to take and then do what we want with it. And we'll take a look into making our own event. And events are really cool. They're really cool for, I mean, what's my favorite thing about .NET and the way C# implements the events is just really seamless. And once you get used to it, at least for me, it was just hard to ever look back. So we'll take a look into that and really really emphasize how powerful Xamarin can be, because once you start taking Android stuff and implementing it using .NET features such as one events and others using like system.link, just using some really powerful .NET features is really when you're really going to start and fall in love with the Xamarin.Android software. So that's what we're going to do in the next tutorial. And so just heads up for that, and thanks for watching.